Hey, how's everybody doing today? I'm friend psychologist Dwayne Frazier giving another crime analysis. The topic I picked for today was over Jason Dalton, also known as the Uber Killer. I came across this story when I was just surfing through YouTube like everybody else. Came across Kendall Rae's story version of the story, how she gave like a full description of it. I actually like the way she did it. I went ahead and put a link down in the description below so that we go ahead and check it out, see what you think for yourself. I'm just gonna go ahead and cover some of the questions that may have been asked about, like what kind of killer was he, as well as what was his mental capacity due to the times crimes that he's committed, as well as like why the insane defense didn't work for him as well. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and that way we can go ahead and get an insight of how the crime was committed. Jason Dalton, at the time the crime was committed, he was 45 years old, father of two, lived in Kalamazoo, Michigan. He worked as an insurance adjuster. He was making pretty decent money. In his spare time, he worked for the app company Uber, where in his spare time he would go around giving people rides, giving people lifts and everything else, just making a little extra money like everybody else likes to do, make some little extra side cash. He just did just so he can have money for when he did family vacations. But on this particular day, he decided to go on a mass killing spree in which nobody understood why he did it except for him, and he's the only person that actually knows the reason why he did these things. Throughout the day, he had over 8 victims. 6 of them actually got killed in the process of it. The thing about it is, most people try to figure out, like, was he a serial killer or was he on the killing spree? The thing about it, they have 2 different mind frames. Serial killers have anywhere between 3 or more victims, but at the same time, that mind frame is different just because they only kill particular set of people, as well as they have a cooldown period in between those victims. So they may have a cooldown period between a couple of weeks to a couple of months, in which the cooldown periods are known like when they're stalking their victims, learning their habits, learning their whereabouts, figuring out, okay, what time they come in this place, what time they go this place, everything else. Whereas with people that's going on a killing spree, there is no motive at all. They're just randomly killing people no matter where they are. They don't care who it is, doesn't matter if you're black, white, young, small, big, whatever. You're on their hit list for some apparent reason. Nobody knows the reason why. And which that was the reason with Jason Dalton. He just went on a large mass killing spree. So with Matt Mullen, he decided to go ahead and get on the app, make some extra money this day. And he went ahead and went to go pick up his first fare, which was a young college student, in which she refused to get in the car because he had his dog in the car. And so she refused to get in, so she canceled the ride and everything and left. And so he continued on, in which he ended up getting another fare from Matt Mullins, where he wanted to get a ride to a friend's house where he left his car at. So he decided to get in the car just because he figured, like, even though he saw the dog in the car, he was like, well, maybe he came back from a run, took the dog for a walk, didn't have to tell him to drop the dog off, decided to go ahead and get on the app. And so he decided, like, hey, I like animals, I'll go ahead and get in the car. So they're driving down the street. Dalton received a phone call from his wife, and Mullen said that he didn't understand like what was going on in the phone call, and so during that time period he just blocked everything off. And so what Dalton did, he just, after the phone call ended, he just went completely blank, like had no expression or anything, and just floored it. And at the time, Mullins was like, hey, you need to go ahead and slow down, you need to stop, because Dalton's just driving, going through intersections, running stop signs, running stop lights, side-swiping vehicles, and Mullins is telling, like, hey, you doing all this stuff, and Dalton just sitting there like nothing happened, like he didn't do anything wrong. And so he gets out to a particular street, and Mullins just going like, hey, my friend stays here, my friend goes there, like just pointing at random houses, just getting stopped. And so Dalton stopped the vehicle abruptly and was like, where are we going exactly? At that time, he just books it, gets out the car, takes off running. And so at that time frame, like, he doesn't take any more fare, he just drives straight home, goes in the house, goes out to the basement, and loads up all his guns. And upon leaving the house, he puts on a bulletproof jacket under his jacket. He leaves the house, takes more fares, but upon leaving, before he leaves the house, he calls his wife saying like, "Hey, I need the keys so I can switch vehicles up." And so she was like, "Well, I do it whenever I get home, blah, blah, blah." And so he's like, "Okay." So he continued taking Uber fares throughout the time period he's waiting. And so he gets another fare where the person puts in the wrong address on accident. It all happens. We've been there before where we put down the wrong address for an app, whether it's for Uber or DoorDash or whatever. We put down the wrong address on accident, don't realize it. And so he put in an apartment complex and he's driving around, trying to figure out where exactly this person is, even though she called him saying, "Hey, I accidentally put down the wrong address. Here's the direction of the place you need to go to." So he's in the apartment complex, driving around, can't find her, and so he comes across this woman that has 5 kids with her. And he pulls up alongside her and asks her, "Are you Macy or Misty or whatever?" And she looks at him and says, "No, I'm Tina." And so he's like, "Okay." Drives off and then turns around, comes back, and she sees this and she has like a really uneasy feeling about it. And so next thing you know, she sees a gun being pointed at her from inside the car. And so she tells kids, "Take off, run, do not stop." And so she goes to do so herself, in which she gets shot in the process as well too. In the total time, she gets shot 4 times. And so Dalton takes off, disappears. Nobody knows where he went to. He decided he's just still doing more Uber fares, picking up more passengers. And so he continues on doing this until it becomes nighttime. He pulls into a car dealership because he said in this interview he said he felt compelled to go to the dealership because he wanted to look at a black BMW. And so he pulls in, and at this time period there was a father and son that's at the dealership looking at a truck that the son wanted to get. And so Dalton gets out of his vehicle, walks up, sees the two, and asks him, "Hey, what are you doing?" And before they can respond to what they was doing, he shoots both of them dead. And then he tries to check out the BMW, tries to open the door, realizes it's locked, and so he leaves. But upon leaving, he doesn't realize that there was a third person in the car that the victims were in, which was the son's girlfriend who was there at the time. And so he leaves. She tries to find a way to call the cops. She realized he left her phone at the house. Calls the cops using her boyfriend's phone. And so as they're waiting, so as she calls and they realize like this call is similar from a call that we had before. And the reason how the call became so similar was because his first fare that he had, which was Matt Mellon, he sat there and told him, call the cops once he got the vehicle, and was like, "Hey, I just had like this experience with this Uber driver and he's driving this kind of car and you need to do something about it." And at this time, police was like, "We do anything at the point," because they were like, "Okay, we'll try to do whatever we can." And so when this incident happens, the girl tells what happens and everything. They realize like, hey, these two may be similar in a way. And so London leaves, continue more Uber fares, picking more passengers. And so later on, he pulls into a Cracker Barrel. And there are 4 women sitting in the vehicle, and he walks up and he shoots every single last one of them in the vehicle, including a little girl that was in the vehicle as well too. All 4 women in the vehicle died except for the little girl. She was seriously injured, but she survived in the end. And so at this point, there's already a lookout for this person because they believe he is going around killing people. And this time period, the police believe they're dealing with a serial killer, in which at this point, he's not a serial killer. He's just a spree killer. All his shootings are random. He's just doing it just because he's the only person that knows the reason why he's doing this. So he was going around. He's still collecting more fares and everything. And at this point, he had already changed vehicles from the vehicle he had before. Because beforehand, he had a silver Chevy Equinox. So he went, dropped it off at the house because he damaged it because from the cars he kept running into. And so upon dropping the vehicle off, he was telling his wife, like, hey, you need to protect yourself, because she was asking questions like, why the car damaged? And he told her the reason why it was damaged was because I got into an argument with some cab drivers, because apparently Uber and these cab companies got a beef going on because the cab company think we're stealing money from them. And so he gives his wife a gun and tells her that you just protect yourself, and to expect to see him on the 11 o'clock news. So at this point, he already knows that he's going to be arrested later on. So he continued doing fares, he changed vehicles and everything, but at this point, like, the last killing he did in the second vehicle he was in. And so he's driving around, and when the police officer notices his vehicle, because at this point, like, when this is at the second shooting, I would say second shooting, third shooting, has sat there and said, like, hey, he's driving this type of vehicle. And so they see the vehicle, goes to pull him over, and at this point they already know, like, they're dealing with somebody that's randomly shooting people. And so police are thinking, like, we are going to get into a gunfight. But things that they didn't expect was he gave up easily. They told him to get the car, he got out, walked to the back of the vehicle, and surrendered. And so in interviews, they asked him, why did you do these things? And he said, the app made me do it. He said, I just sat in the car, activated the app, and next thing I know, I felt like I was being possessed, where it was compelling me to do certain things. And so please listen to this, and they're thinking, like, this person is completely crazy. Because they asked him, like, so how do you decide, like, who lived and who died? And so his reaction was, well, the app changed colors depending on the person that they wanted me to kill. So it was red, I didn't kill them. But when the app turned black, I had to kill somebody. And so every time he killed somebody, it was because the app turned black. And so when he went to pick up more passengers and they got in the car, the app turned red. So it told him not to kill anybody. And so at this point, they were like, all right, he already said what the reason why he did and everything. So they booked him and everything. And so he was going to trial. And so most people don't realize, like, before you do trial, they have you do a competent evaluation where they try to see if you are competent enough to actually stand trial. And so all it is like they either have like a psychologist or a forensic psychologist, such as myself, come in and we do an evaluation to see if the person is competent to stand trial, in which all that entails is to see, like, did you understand, like, the crimes that was committed? Was you aware of anything that was going on? As well as, do you know, like, the function of court proceedings? Like, do you know what your defense attorney is there for? Do you understand what the prosecutor's jobs are done? The judges are there for? Do you understand, like, how the jury works? And, like, all those questions play a part into the competency evaluation to see if you understand. And so if you are competent enough to stand trial, they were like, all right, he's sane enough to be able to stand trial, give his testimony and everything. Because at that point, they can say, like, you can help your lawyer out in your defense. And so they felt everything was fine with him. Everything was good. And so they take him to trial. So at his pre-trial, his defense attorneys wanted to go ahead and play the insanity defense. Now in Michigan, they have the insanity plea, which is the 768.21, which is the insanity defense, in which the person can only be declared as insane if at the time they offense the person the person can be considered insane as the result of a mental health or intellectual disability. So for the state of Michigan, for you to even be able to play the insane defense, you already have to have a history of mental health or intellectual disability, in which Dalton didn't have. And so at his pre-trial, the person that came to testify was the first person he shot, which was Tina. She came and tried to give her testimony, but during her testimony, Dalton started making funny noises, started acting up in court, and got to the point where he came close to actually lunging at her, in which at that point, like, she was already crying, she was already breaking down because she was getting his testimony, and he's sitting right in front of her as she do so. And so at this point, Dalton decides they seriously decided to take Dalton out of court just because he was making the fuss in it.
It's a shocking moment as the Uber driver accused of slaying 6 people is literally dragged out of court after lunging at a witness. Tiana Carruthers, who was shot 4 times in the February shooting rampage, wailed uncontrollably on the witness stand during the disturbing episode. The drama unfolded at the Uber driver's pre-trial hearing in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Tiana, who is 25 years old, is still suffering from her wounds.
I seen him coming.
In the middle of her testimony, the defendant, Jason Dalton, started interrupting her, rambling incoherently. The judge ordered him to stop.
You need to be quiet in today's proceedings, okay? If you have anything to say, whisper to your attorney.
Tiana is credited with shielding 5 children during the shooting spree in February. On the stand, Tiana struggled to maintain her composure. Suddenly, the Uber driver lunged out of his seat. He was restrained by deputies and had to be dragged out of the courtroom. Tiana was helped into a wheelchair as stunned spectators watched her leave the courtroom. She could be heard asking for her mother.
There was a lot of emotion because most of the people in the courtroom are friends and family members of all of the victims in this case. So it really struck and hit home to all of them to watch this woman that has been put through so much really almost re-attacked by Dalton, the suspect in this case.
The defendant was not allowed to return to court and was forced to follow the proceedings on a closed-circuit link, with 2 deputies restraining him if he made any move. Tiana bravely continued her testimony, identifying the Uber driver as the man who shot her.
I could never forget his face, ever.
So with Tina's breakdown, she got to a point where she had to be removed from the courtroom via wheelchair just because of how distraught she was, as well as the fact that she was still recovering from her injuries at this point. And so Dalton, realizing that he has no chance of winning, he decides to just plead guilty for the crime that was committed for. And so I know some people wondering, like, was he literally insane? Which at the point, no, he was not insane at all, just because of the fact that when we view things like this as forensic psychologists, we try to understand the full picture of it. So for you to say, like, oh, I may have been possessed or I was insane at the time that I committed these crimes, like, for us, we have to figure out, like, okay, was you aware that you committed these crimes? If he was aware, then, because there's like a lot of red flags that show that he was actually aware of what he was doing, due to the fact that you went home and put on a bulletproof vest, as well as load up your weapons for a fight, really. And so at this point, we understand, like, you knew, fully aware of what you was doing at this time. And so that's one of the key things that we take into effect, as well as the fact of that instead of, like, killing every person you saw, you picked and choose every person you killed. And it was like no set pattern at all. It was just always random. But you never killed people that was making you money, which means, like, you was fully aware of it. And so at this point, like, you really can't play the insanity card just because by saying, like, oh, I got possessed once I activated the app. Well, you were possessed, then you would have no memory of ever committing anything. The only thing you would do is be like, hey, I'll start the app up, then I blacked out, and then next you know, when I came to, it's like I was surrounded by cops. That would be an insanity offense. But with that being said, like, there's really no ifs, ands, or buts about, like, why he did the things that he did. He just decided to kill people. Some of the theories that came out was, like, he was depressed. There was some family issues he was going through, even though there was, like, no history at all of, like, anything going on. As well as the key thing of, like, him, like, well, I understand, like, people do get depression over time. Sometimes it just comes at you, but the thing is, like, it staggers throughout a certain length of time. I mean, he had to be depressed for months, maybe even the years, before he just started acting out. But just like coming out the blue and just randomly do it, it's like there's no way. I'm like, this is too planned out, too premeditated and everything. So you knew exactly what he was doing. So the thing that we have to understand is, like, not everything, like, some things are random, some things are planned out. For me, I really don't believe that he is a serial killer. I just think he's just a spree killer that just decided to just go around killing everybody, or killing many people that he saw before he was captured. And a part of me feels like, just respecting this from an unbiased position, that he's not insane at all. He's just a perfectly sane person that's just decided to just snap and just go around killing people. Thanks for watching. I don't want to waste any more of your time today. Want to see more videos, don't forget to like and subscribe at the very bottom. Any topics you want to go ahead and discuss, or any people that you may have want some insight on, go ahead and put a comment down below, and I'll go ahead and get back at you as soon as I can. But thanks for watching.